Think your cruise gratuities are a nice bonus for your hardworking cabin steward? Think again. The cruise lines have completely taken over the cruise gratuity process, and the only real beneficiary seems to be the cruise lines themselves. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly where your cruise gratuities go, the hidden caps they've placed on crew earnings, and the shocking policy they try to enforce if you have those automatic gratuities removed from your account. I'm Gary with Optimal Cruising, bringing you the cruise insider information you need to avoid mistakes, save money, and protect yourself so that you can have your best cruise ever. Decades ago, when I first started cruising, all gratuities were handled in cash. In fact, at the end of your cruise, your cabin steward would put these white envelopes in your cabin, along with a sheet that was kind of a guideline list of how much cash you should give each member who was serving you per day of the cruise. And then it was up to you if you wanted to give a little more or a little less, depending on your service, and you'd put that cash in the envelope, write the staff member's name on it, and hand it to them on the last day of the cruise. This would go to your cabin steward, your wait staff, and anybody else you wanted to give money to or a tip to during your cruise. The full benefit of that cash tip, 100% of it, went directly to the crew member. Today, that just doesn't happen. These days, the cruise lines have completely taken over this process. They say in the name of fairness, but is it really that fair? I'm about to show you why it's not and what you can actually do about it. The cruise lines now automatically charge your onboard account for cruise gratuities during your cruise if you didn't prepay them prior to the cruise. And they take full control of what happens to those gratuities. And what they actually do with them is quite shocking. Because you would think that these gratuities are supposed to be a bonus for the hard-working service personnel, right? That's what gratuities are. For example, we go to a restaurant. We know the wait staff is underpaid, so we automatically give them a tip, and if they do a great job, we give them an even better tip. But this is not how it works any longer in the cruising industry. In fact, look here at Royal Caribbean's own policy on their website for how they distribute the automatic gratuities that they collect. Right on their website, it says, gratuities collected are pooled and applied toward the compensation of onboard crew members. The compensation, isn't that the wage the cruise line is supposed to be paying? Other cruise lines have the same policies. Here's what Norwegian states on their website. Staff are compensated by a combination of salary and incentive programs that your service charge supports. So clearly, when we are being charged automatic gratuities, that is in some way going to meet salary obligations of the cruise line for their staff. While gratuities, by definition, are meant to be a bonus or supplement on top of the person's wage, because cruise lines conveniently register their ships and incorporate themselves in countries with little or no labor laws, they're actually manipulating this gratuity system. So for example, if a crew member is entitled to earn $1,800 a month by contract, the cruise line has to give them that amount. Let's say that this particular staff member is entitled to $1,400 in gratuities. The cruise line doesn't pay them their base salary of $1,800 plus an additional $1,400 in gratuities. The cruise line takes those $1,400 in gratuities off of their base pay and only gives them an additional $400 out of their pocket. The gratuities are funding the salary obligation, not generally acting as a complete bonus to the cruise staff. Now, in some cases, with certain cruise lines, if a cruise ship is experiencing full capacity for a month and they're collecting a lot of these automatic gratuities, it might happen that the gratuities exceed the base salary of the staff member. In that case, they will receive a little bonus. So let's say that the automatic gratuities applied to this particular staff member were $2,000 for a given month. In that case, they'd get the $2,000. But $1,800 of that would be considered their base salary. To me, that just doesn't seem right. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Let's look at a situation where you have a staff member that works really hard, say a cabin steward, and everybody loves this cabin steward. Nobody removes their gratuities. Everybody's contributing to that pool. But that cabin steward does not proportionately benefit from those gratuities because they're pooled. They're at least split among the entire ship, in some cases among the entire cruise line. And so by working extra hard, he or she receives almost no direct benefit from these automatic gratuities. But that begs the question, what happens if you remove your gratuities? Well, that just means the cruise line has to open their own wallet and make up the difference to meet the contractual salary obligation. Cruise lines are corporate behemoths. They are not stupid. And it's easy to see across their websites how they have started shifting their language away from gratuities and towards hospitality or service charges to justify what they're doing. In fact, when you see that automatic gratuity charge show up on your bill on major cruise lines like Norwegian, Holland America, Celebrity, they no longer even call it a gratuity. Now they call it a hotel charge or a service charge. By calling it a service charge, cruise lines are openly admitting that they are not using these gratuities to give complete bonuses to the staff. Back when I first started cruising and everybody was tipping in cash, the crew members were getting rewarded directly with that money going into their pockets. That was the motivation for great service. But these days, if you wonder why the service is lacking sometimes or has gone down, as is indicated by all kinds of comments everywhere throughout social media, it's because they're no longer directly rewarded from these gratuities, yet we're still paying them. And while some crew members do receive bonuses from time to time, the amount a crew member can earn is severely capped based on how the cruise line structures their contracts. They base these contracts on what their targets are for double occupancy. If those targets are met, the crew member's not going to receive much of an incentive bonus at all, because meeting those targets simply means that the crew appreciation that is collected is enough to supplement the wages to the extent that the cruise line hopes that they will. But if the cruise ship is operating above these targets or at full capacity, the cruise line will be collecting a lot more automatic gratuities than they had anticipated, yet they will not be giving 100% of that extra to the staff. They use a portion of it to subsidize salaries of behind-the-scenes staff members, and maybe the hard-working front-facing crew might earn a slight bonus, but they are capped in their contracts. Next, I'm going to get to what we can actually do about this and the shocking reality of what happens if you remove those gratuities. But first, if you would take a minute and hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. It helps us grow and you won't miss our next video. In my opinion, I wish the cruise lines would just charge the actual fare that they need to get you on that ship, instead of hiding behind collecting gratuities and using that to help meet their basic salary costs. But there are still some ways that you can really reward good staff members. One is, and I've noticed this more and more over the past 5 years is that crew members will approach you if you have a relationship with them or if they're serving you continuously throughout the cruise and ask you if you wouldn't mind mentioning their name in the comments or in the survey that you get after the cruise is done. Because in many cases, crew members are eligible for promotions and some bonuses for getting mentioned or being praised for their service level. Another way to directly impact your room steward or your wait staff that is giving you great service is to directly hand them cash. But technically, this only works if you're still paying the automatic gratuities. In that case, they are contractually entitled to keep 100% of that cash tip that you hand over. Where this would differ is if you're tipping somebody like a bartender or casino staff. Those tips, they still get 100% of, but they are pooled among the staff working during that period when you're giving the tip. And in most cases, because cruise lines do not make it mandatory at the time that you purchase your fare that you also have to pay for these gratuities, if you ask, they will remove them from your onboard account. However, it is shocking the policy that they have implemented for their employees if you remove these gratuities. Cruise lines have it written into the employee contracts that if a customer removes gratuities and decides to pay in cash instead, the employee is contractually required to hand over that cash to the cruise line, who will then pool it and use it the same way they use the automatic electronically collected gratuities. Now, whether or not a staff member will really turn in 100% of that, I'm not sure, but they could lose their job if they're discovered not complying with this policy. So not only have the cruise lines taken over the entire gratuity process, but they are strictly controlling how we can give gratuities. In fact, we cannot choose to give it in cash. They're still telling the employees that they have to pool it and it has to be split up the way the cruise line wants to split it up. And the only way contractually that they will allow employees to keep this cash is if it is on top of those automatic gratuities. To me, this is a clear admission by the cruise lines that they are using these automatic gratuities to pay salaries, not to reward the staff. I'd really like to know what you think about this. Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, this isn't the only way cruise lines try to take more of our money. I'll tell you all about that right here.